Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce DeTorres, and with me today is John Lira, running as a Democrat for Congress in Texas's 35th district. Before I read about you, John, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Mr. Del Torres, and thanks so much for allowing me this opportunity to speak with you and have a conversation with you and all the great people who follow the podcast.
No, thank you very much. My honor. After high school, John joined the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. Came home, worked as an intelligence analyst, a policy expert, and later as a senior presidential advisor for AmeriCorps. At the Small Business Administration, he worked to help veterans start their own businesses. And John's running to defend democracy, lower costs for working families, revive small businesses, and build the infrastructure of the future. And his site is liraforcongress.com, LIRAFOR, congress.com. John, in your own words, at your own pace, tell me, I think, first about you and your heart and soul and what led you to throw your hat in the ring to go to Congress.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity. And I'd love to share my story because it is a uniquely, I think, American story. It's definitely a San Antonio story. I was born and raised in the southeast side of San Antonio, heavily working class community, heavily Hispanic community out here. My parents worked hard enough to pay all the bills and have a little bit left over for some tacos in the weekends where we can share together. And that was really our joy, just going out to eat with each other as a family on the weekends. But at a 17 years old, I did the smartest thing I've ever done in life to raise my hand and enlist in the United States Marine Corps, as you mentioned. And that really planted a seed of service in me. I didn't recognize it at the time, but all signs point to that little thing I did is take that oath to defend, support, and defend the Constitution. That took me to Iraq. I was part of the invasion of Iraq in 2003 with the launch of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I returned to Iraq as a reservist about a year later with the 325 Marines, Lucky Lima. I actually deployed with Senator Ruben Gallego in the same battalion as he did in 2005. So after the military service, I wanted to use my GI Bill to continue serving my community. So I used it to transition from a intelligence analyst to a policy analyst so that I can now assist elected and appointed leaders in making the important decisions for their constituents. So, got my degrees in political science and public policy, earned my master's from Carnegie Mellon, and that took me to Washington, D.C. My first job in civil service was at AmeriCorps, serving as their advisor for veterans and military families. I worked at the U.S. Small Business Administration, Office of Veterans Business Development. So I would love to get into talking with small business issues a little bit later and opportunities a little bit later. And then also served on a unique commission that was created by John McCain on service, how to inspire an ethos of wanting to serve in the military and national and public service. So I've had a full career of service, and I think it all started just by raising my hand. And it has taken me to the forefront of a lot of federal policy and a lot of federal issues. So that's where I'm most comfortable. And that's essentially what brought me here today. I did not mention that I did run for Congress before in 2022. I was the Democratic nominee against Tony Gonzalez. This was the district in the year of that horrible Uvalde school shooting. And we stood strong with those family members. And, we fought as hard as we could, came up a little bit short, but learned a lot in that one. So, basically brought us back here. I went to go serve in the Biden-Harris administration just this past, for the last year, the half of the administration. And that was an amazing opportunity to learn how to lead, to be at the table, making important decisions and seeing how federal resources can trickle down into our communities, into our nonprofits, into the people who need them the most. So I've been blessed with an opportunity to serve in many capacities. And yes, now we're looking to serve at the front lines in the political arena as a member of U.S. Congress.
Thank you. Where in Texas, what major towns would a non-Texan recognize where the 35th district is?
Absolutely. It is anchored in South and Southeast San Antonio, and it has additional counties that have, say, Floresville, which is a very popular city right outside San Antonio, Seguin, which is a very big city that's right outside San Antonio in Guadalupe County. But it also has, some of the Converse areas, the Kirby, St. Hedwig, So pretty much South San Antonio and a bit of its outskirts, heading to Lavernia and all that. So
Mhm.
a lot of small towns, outside of San Antonio, it gets kind of real small town real quick. And that's just the way I like it. My high school was outside of San Antonio city limits, actually. So we had to drive past, ranches and
Mhm.
stray cattle some mornings just to
Mhm.
get to school. It was like a 20-minute drive to our high school.
What has who has represented the district for the last few cycles?
Yeah, this district I think was created in the 2002 census redistricting, and Lloyd Doggett was the first member of Congress to represent it. It covered a lot of Austin at that point. And then during the redistricting in 2022, it was represented by Greg Casar. It was the second representative to represent Texas 35. So if we are elected, we would be the third Democrat to represent the numerical District 35, but of course, it's taken multiple shapes since then.
Right. And the last couple Congress representatives, they've been Democrats.
Yes, absolutely. Mostly because a lot of this was anchored in Austin, which of course is a very democratic, very blue city. And then would stretch all the way to San Antonio, which is a very democratic and very blue city as well. So this time around, not so much. They've cut out a lot of all. It took out Austin completely, left in blue democratic San Antonio, but also kind of to counterbalance it, they put in some pretty red-leaning counties in Guadalupe and Wilson and Karnes counties. So it'll be definitely a turnout game. I think there's more registered Democrats in Texas 35, but
Mhm.
they're just in low performing precincts. So it will be our job as Democrats to turn them out, to excite them, to get them excited about the right message, the right candidate, the right energy heading into 2026.
Thank you. What does your district respond most to, or what are you emphasizing in your campaign? These are the major goals. These are the major problems you want to work on. What are those kind of things?
Yeah, it's all tabletop issues. I mean, we are 75% of the vote will come in South San Antonio. These are working class communities. These are the ones that are on the front lines of feeling the effects of tariff increases. They're on the front lines of experiencing, corporate price gouging. They're on the front lines of when SNAP benefits get halted. They're at the front lines of when your healthcare subsidies go away. They're the ones that are going to have to pay the cost. So a lot of it has to do with bringing down these costs. We have a lot of young families here. Rent is too expensive for their paychecks in many ways. The thought of buying a house seems very distant because the inflation and the price of housing has went up because there's not enough a supply of affordable housing. So I think these issues resonate. Even the purchase of automobiles. Even childcare. Childcare average in San Antonio is $700 a week. If you add that up by the month, that's more than some can be paying on their rent. Some can be paying on their mortgage. So we really want to go and get these price controls under control. It seems like there's no real stop at this point. And I think if the Democrats are able to win the House come September 26th, people will finally see that there might be some end to the price hikes in sight. As we look to wrangle some of the tariffs, again, we look to go to prescription drugs and allow Medicare more opportunity to negotiate, to bring down the caps on insulin. So there's a lot to do kind of under the umbrella of making our dollar as powerful as it once used to be. Because right now, the American dollar just is not buying as much in our stores as it used to be. And that's hurting a lot of families out here. And that's the most responsive thing. I will add one more note about that, and it's about the Texas redistricting. The Texans are smart. We can smell BS a mile away. We know when the goalpost is moved right in front of us in the middle of the game. Depending on if they're left or right. A lot of Texans, I think, feel that this was a little bit of misuse of rules, of a rewriting of the rules, rewriting of the maps. So there is that element out there. It's adding confusion to our voters because they have to figure out which district and which candidates now that they have to learn more about. So I think there is a lot of resentment and a lot of angst towards the decision of the Texas Republicans to do a mid-decade redistricting.
Thank you. Do you have a primary to be the Democrat nominee for the election?
We do. This is a contested primary, and honestly, I wouldn't expect anything less. We've been here in the last 4 months, telling everybody that we can talk to how competitive this seat is for a Democrat. So right now we are a Democratic Party primary of four in this seat. I think I welcome it. I think whoever makes it out of this, and I hope to make it out of this, it'll make us again stronger, able to make our case to the people in a broader sense. I am the only candidate who has run for U.S. Congress before. I'm a Democratic nominee, so that's given us a significant head start, as you can imagine, on name recognition, on a base of donors, a base of former endorsers. So we are reactivating the same coalition that helped us in 2022 when we ran, and some of our district overlaps. So there's some overlapping voters that could actually vote for me twice this time around. But we want to be the campaign that's most active, that's most accessible, that's most visible in the communities. We're doing this full time. My closest competitor is a sheriff's deputy who's still working full time for the sheriff's department. So this is serious business. If you can't afford to run for Congress and represent your issues and connect with voters full time, then you're already behind the power curve.
Question about folks who can vote for you twice. Do you mean because they voted for you once in 22 and now they can vote again? Or your districts overlap, they can't vote for you twice in this election?
Yeah, not in this election, unless primary in general, but folks who had voted for me when I was running in Texas
Thank
23,
you.
there's a huge chunk of the district that was formerly Texas 23. So if they were able to vote for me in 2022, there's a big chunk of neighborhoods and communities that are able to do it again.
Thank you. Did I hear you correctly? It's affordability along the major life expenses is in a nutshell what you're saying your platform is?
Absolutely. I think it's aggressively my why I'm running to Congress is to lower the cost of living for working class Americans so they can build their savings up again, so they can purchase that new car, so they can have a down payment on that new home or even a down payment on their new rental property. To be able to not be broke, their average Americans out here again are one emergency away from going broke, whether it's a broken car payment, whether it's a missed payment on, a big purchase that the family needs or something, or helping out another family member, having to miss work because another family member gets sick. Only one paycheck away from being in dire straits financially. So we want to fix that. We want to make people give them the resources and the opportunities to thrive here in San Antonio. And a big piece of that also, second piece of that, Bruce, is entrepreneurship, small business development. Texans are some of the most entrepreneurial people that I know. Most people I know have a full-time job and they also have a side job on how they earn money on the weekends or how they sell things that they create on the weekends or a service on the weekends. So small business launching and business ownership, entrepreneurship is also a complementary side of that. Not only do we want to lower costs, but give them opportunities to be entrepreneurial, to elevate themselves and their families and create jobs in their communities.
Before your candidacy in 22 and now again this year and coming into, next year 26, tell me about the your process of reaching that decision of wondering whether you want to run for Congress and how do you make that decision then and also now?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a long, continuous line of service. As a young Marine, again, was responsible for providing the best and most accurate information to military commanders so that they can make the best battlefield decisions to save lives, to accomplish the mission. I wanted to do that for elected and appointed leaders at the highest level. I wanted them to make the best decisions for our nation. And at the time, I was a young veteran, as I want to help the people who are making decisions about going to war or caring for our troops and our families after they return from war. How can I help them pass the bills that we need as veterans? I went from being an intelligence analyst to a policy analyst. I think of policy as a beginning, a middle, and an end. First, the people who create and ideate about the policy. You think about the think tanks, the universities, and the institutes. Then there's the people that make the policy, which is the legislature mostly. And then there's the people that implement the policy. These are the federal agencies. And I've worked on every section of that, the beginning, the middle, and the end of public policy. I love, even as a member of the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service, this was a 3-year long research commission designed to answer the question, should women be required to register for the draft now that combat roles were open to women? As you could imagine, if you ask 100 people, you'll probably get 100 different answers. And that's exactly what we did. We traveled the country, had meetings with different demographics, whether they were veterans or women, college students, middle schoolers, but asking them, what is your definition of service? So, I was definitely able to hypothesize laws, but I went into the legislature, write laws, and recommend policy solutions. But I also went to Congressman Jimmy Panetta's office and helped execute solutions. We helped get some of his provisions into the National Defense Authorization. I would staff him and recommend bills for him to co-sponsor in the national defense and veteran space. But even on the federal agency side, we were able, I was helping to run a national program that did nothing but give grants to veteran organizations. So I think I just want to continue that. Listen, I've written congressional budget justifications that go to Congress. As a member of Congress, I've reviewed budget requests from different agencies, and we've asked and we've written provisions. So I bring that expertise in me. But I think the biggest knowledge that I have and that I can take to Washington is my cultural knowledge, is the people of my understanding and my lived experience back here in the district. But I'm ready to exercise, all these experiences that I
Mhm.
learned from, the SBA, from working through nonprofits, working with veterans organization, even members of Congress on Capitol Hill. I want to continue that, and really leverage that experience.
And you said as a member of Congress, but I think you meant as a someone supporting Congress. You did some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, I was not a member
right.
of Congress.
Are you ready to for us to swing into the small business issues?
Sure, I love small business.
Well, so everybody knows, we wrote you our big intro, information, email letter from me about what the American Small Business League is doing to expose the fact that small business contracts worth billions of dollars every year go to big businesses. It's really an outrage and a scandal going back for decades. And the SBA, your experience there could come in very valuable and handy, facilitates kind of the con job of saying every year, oh, 23% of federal contracts go to small businesses every year. We can make the case, and we do, and show how no, that's not really the case. And one of the opportunities for you and any candidate is to get convinced about that and say, hey, listen, I want to correct that when I get there. And particularly our Don't Cheat Women.com project, where we want Congress to raise from 5% to 15% the federal contracts that must go to women owned small businesses. And here's why: it's not charity. Women are half the population, obviously. I believe they're actually more than half the population. They own 40% of all the businesses in America. They sell what the government buys, and the government buys everything. The federal government is the world's largest purchaser of goods and services on the planet. They own 40% of all businesses, women do. They sell what the government buys, and the law says only 5% of federal contracts must go to women owned small businesses. It can't be okay with anybody that companies owned by men get 95% of all federal contracts. And not only will that empower women by raising from 5 to 15% the amount that should go to women, it would push from 23 to 33% the amount of federal contracts that must go to small businesses. And that's where the fun really kicks in, because small businesses create most net new jobs in America. The big businesses that are getting the vast majority of the federal contracts do not create any new jobs. If and when 33% of federal contracts actually went to small businesses, they would create about 3 million new jobs every year, John, on top of the 2 million jobs America typically creates every year. It would be the economic stimulus that the 1953 Small Business Act meant for it to be when it said back then a fair portion of federal contracts must go to small businesses. Now it's become 23%. And as people can see at ASBL.com, our website, in reality, we see small businesses really getting only 3 or 4% of federal contracts. Bear in mind, 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. That means, according to us and our experience and decades and legal victories and dozens of congressional investigations and inspector general reports from the SBA itself, that the 1/10 of 1% of companies that are big businesses are getting about 95, 96% of all federal contracts. And because they're already big companies, they don't create any new jobs. Take a deep breath. I'm almost done. John, here's the bonus good things that will happen when women get a more fair portion of federal contracts. They'll be able to pursue political equality. Right now, men earn and save more than women, and that allows men to dominate politically. Men give 75% of all donations to candidates, so they have more influence right there. Men hold 75% of all seats in the House, in the Senate, every state legislature, every president's cabinet, almost that many governor chairs, and 90% of committee chair and party leadership positions. Women aren't running for and winning office simply because they're not as economically prosperous as men. Women are doing better by many measures over the last many years. But this is an area where if they actually got this fairness and ability to compete for federal contracts, they would have more economic power. They'd be able to run for office, win more office, and become political equals. It's 2025, almost 2026. And women have different political values, priorities, and policies that they would pursue. We need the sanity, the intelligence, and the emotional wisdom of the whole human race involved in this experiment called self-government that our republic is. So, John, our invitation to you is to study these things, dig into the facts and figures at ASBL.com. Don'tcheatwomen.com has this all laid out, everything I just said. Call me, talk to me as your small business, advisor or whatever through the course of this campaign, and talk about these things on the campaign and see, does it excite people? Does it make sense? Does it bring together left and right, Republicans and Democrats? And just does it make sense for Congress to get behind this agenda? I'm going to take a sip of water and a deep breath and listen to everything you want to tell me about all you just heard.
They're staggering. Those are head shaking statistics. They're staggering statistics. I'm part of a family of, our next generation is four girls, four young ladies, oldest being 21, and they're entering this world knowing that they're, like I said, earning less economically sufficient so that they might not be able to run for office or to launch that business that they've been dreaming about. It makes me really sad. I first started actually to dig deep, actually, you might appreciate this, into for my honors thesis at Carnegie Mellon. Our final project was on SBA's women business centers. We did a thorough deep dive. We looked at the data coming out of each women business center, what they were saying their challenges were as far as technology, recruitment, and engagement. We let us do surveys to those directors to find out how SBA can do better for them. I mean, it was a really great experience. So there was a time in my life where I felt like I knew everything about women's entrepreneurship, or at least women's business centers. And they're an important part of society. I absolutely agree. I've been on this fight before to increase the percentage. I know I've been in circles where they want the number of allotted veterans mandate for small business to be increased as well. And I've helped fight those fights. And I absolutely agree with you. You do have an ally in trying to raise that percentage of women. I mean, 5% being regulated, even if it's a minimum, that's not satisfactory. I've met several of the inspiring women that you mentioned who have great jobs selling supplies to the government, providing vital basic services to the government. These are good leaders. Some of them are veteran women leaders, strong leaders who know logistics, who know how to get a team in place, who know how to work through very complex contracts with the government. And they risk a lot. And the government asks too much. It's too much of a barrier to entry for small business, period. And again, you mentioned already all the other externalities that women have to deal with. So I do believe you have an ally in that. I know that the definition of a small business is, I think, like 100 employees at this point. And we
Well,
know how big these corporations can be, multi-billion dollars with just 50 employees for the most part. And you have guidelines on what you would like to see as far as the definition of small business. Is that correct?
yes, because right now the government loosely says a small business is up to 500 employees. And many federal agencies, if not all of them, can pick and choose what a small business is. Depending, that's why it's a muddle and a fuddle and it's a fog of bureaucracy in order for them to get away
That's why
with
when
saying,
the federal government provides small business relief, well, guess who it gets stuck to? The ones that have teams of attorneys, teams of grant writers, and folks who can
and they're
get in
big
their requests for
businesses.
that relief faster.
Yeah. And specifically to your question for, everyone who heard it, 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses by the current definition of 500 up to 500 employees. Two things. Because of different industries, because it's this industry or that industry, different federal agencies can award a small business contract to a firm that has 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees, a firm that's worth $20 million, $50 million, and more, some of the biggest companies in the world. And uh, our second bullet point ask is to define a small business as up to only 100. And here's why. And this is what's shocking. 98% of all businesses in America have less than 100 employees. But wait, the average business has 6 or 7 employees. Now, but wait, out of the 36 million small businesses, 26, 27 million of them have no employees. They're just the owner. And
Yes.
when the SBA and the president and Congress and the news talks about federal assistance to small business, oh, we're helping small businesses, we're helping small businesses. You say SBA, and most people hear loan, a loan from the SBA. Well, the SBA doesn't give loans; they back loans that are qualified at the local level. 32 million of our small businesses are in industries that the government buys from. So theoretically, 32 million businesses could apply for federal contracts. How many small businesses ever get a federal contract in any given year? About 80,000, about 0.1%. It's ridiculous. They don't want, the federal government does not want us to know that these contracts are available. And like you said, if you go to SBA, how do I apply for a federal contract? Clickety, clickety, click. All of a sudden, you're lost in the weeds of all these different websites. It's not easy to learn. Two things. What contracts could I apply for? How do you apply them? The hoops and hurdles are prohibitive because the biggest companies in the world for decades, easily since World War II, companies change, mergers, acquisitions. I know all that. But it's the giant corporations that have a lock on almost every penny of the federal budget, which is between 800 billion and 1.5 trillion every single year. So, John, in the palm of your hands as a candidate and as a congressman, is to say, is to blow the whistle on this and blow it
Absolutely.
sky high. I don't know if it'll let you win. I don't know if you'll get driven off the road. I don't know if it's dangerous to your health to try to expose these realities. But if you're a man of integrity who cares about the truth and cares about having people in Washington who work for we the people, this is a red hot opportunity.
Yeah. It's similar to disallowing women to register for the draft. And I know it's a big stretch, but just let me tell you why I think that. Because we're leaving talent on the table. We're leaving leaders out of the ball game. We're leaving voices that can have a real impact, services, knowledge, wisdom that can have a real impact. We're leaving on the sidelines. That's what, by not allowing women to register for the draft and potentially be called if it's a national emergency, we're leaving talent. We're leaving somebody who wants to be in the fight on the sidelines. And these women business owners, minority business owners, veteran business owners, they want to be in the fight too. They want to contribute to the wealth of our country. They want to give and provide for our government, and we're leaving them on the sidelines. So I absolutely will work to figure that out. I do want to, increase the mandate or at least reevaluate these mandates to see how we can fit. I'm running this entire race to be a voice for the unrepresented, a voice for the little guy, the little woman, the little man who's wanting to have a greater impact than our nation is allowing them, that circumstances and that environments and that laws and rules are allowing them. So absolutely, you'll have an ally. I hope I get put on the committee that handles small business legislation and policy because I want to look at that. I want to open up the GI Bill to small business loans potentially, so that more veterans, that veteran-owned businesses were a huge economic pillar after World War II, even a little bit after Vietnam when veterans launched their own business. Right now, that's starting to decrease, so we want to elevate that back up. But I tell you, even in San Antonio, I think women are the most entrepreneurial people that I see in my community. These are the ones who are launching a food truck. It might be a food stand, and then the next year it's a food truck. And then the next 2 years, guess what? They have the restaurant that they used to be in front of. And in 5 years from that, guess what? They've opened 3 restaurants in our community based off that one little, that one woman who had the vision, who had the desire to keep pushing and sell their goods and sell their services. So I want to see more of it, especially now there's a lot of tariffs and they're hurting corporations and they're rising prices. I think small business, locally raised and cultivated small business has an opportunity to fill those gaps locally. And I want to I want to make sure that they thrive. It's a lot of risk. It's not easy to do and be successful at, but the government wants to reward that. If you want to take on that risk to provide jobs in your community, to sell a good that's valuable to the community, we want to step up and support that.
It's
And that
it's
means expanding training, women business centers, access to the knowledge, to the computer, a little bit of technology, to the experts, so that they can get started in the right foot.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the business centers. Our impression or understanding is that the Trump administration has closed or wants to close most of the women's business centers. Um, we accuse the federal government of doing next to nothing for small businesses. And, like I said, people can learn all about it at ASBL.com. Also, the don'tcheatwomen.com has all these facts and figures that I shared with you. And it's got a letter people could swipe and send to Congress and their senators and the White House and say, because when women get 15% of federal contracts, that still means 85% of federal contracts go to companies owned by men. So you're right. But we've got a starting point. Like this is the legislation we would like to see somebody champion.
This race, this election, people are really hurting. They're really experiencing financial stress like we haven't in a long time. I don't even think pre-COVID brought along this level of financial stress that seniors are feeling, that young families are feeling because of the rising cost. So I want to be an ally for them. I want to do whatever, pass whatever legislation aggressively makes life livable again so that we can not only just survive in the current environment, but thrive, become business owners, become college graduates, peel away from a business that we've been working at for the last 20 years and go launch our own. So I definitely support that. I'm an ally of small business. I'm an ally of veterans and military families. And the people have spoken. They want battle-tested leadership. They want authentic leadership in Washington, D.C., members who are approachable and who will listen to them and actually work to find policy solutions. I feel like that's what I've been doing since I was a young Marine as an intelligence analyst. And I hope the people of Texas 35 give me that opportunity to do that for them as their voice in Washington.
And remember this fact, and it's really incredible. In 2010, the chairperson of the Senate Small Business Committee said, for every 1% increase of federal contracts to small businesses, 100,000 jobs get created. So the Trump administration in the springtime slashed by 10% the contracts to go to minority-owned businesses. That's got to be 1 million jobs that did not get created this year because of that. And if we get and you get women-owned businesses to get 15%, not 5% of federal contracts, that extra 10% right there is an additional 1 million jobs. And that's why I said if all the contracts going to small businesses went from 23% to 33%, that represents 3.3 million jobs. So, John and everybody watching and listening, master this stuff, wrap your head around it, and watch how it brings people together, because it is a positive, cost-free, tax-free platform and program that does one thing: pours investment into the middle class, into our small businesses. And if you're a small business owner and you think, I own a salon, I own a massage parlor, I'm never going to apply for a federal contract. Why do I care about this kind of stuff? It's because of the job creation in your community by the small businesses who get those federal contracts. That's all the more people who are going to need massages and haircuts and their their ducts clean and their gutters cleaned and all that good stuff. So it's endless, it's big, it's huge, and
And I can
all
tell you, Bruce, they try to do that in Texas just recently, is take women and minority out of their hub, out of their business hub that they're helping and so helping to sponsor here at the state level. So imagine at the federal level, they're already stripping these privileges, these recognitions, these certifications, and now at the state level here in Texas, they've begun. So the fight is big. I'm raising my hand, saying, send me. I want to be an ally of small business. I want to be in small business impacts again, all of us.
indeed,
So
and yeah, and what you just described at the state level is a state level version of the complete corporate capture of Washington, D.C., and the buying and all the agencies. It's a joke how little that level of government works for real Americans and small businesses. So, with that, John, I want to thank you very, very much. And we'll be sharing this far and wide. And I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.